Allie Lane Cohen would like to dedicate this episode to Nicole and Callie at the VWPA podcast. Allie writes, Nicole and Callie share such intimate thoughts and feelings, and their ideas are intellectual fodder for my mind. I'm so very grateful for the gift that these intelligent, sensitive, creative, passionate, and powerfully spoken warrior princesses give me with their podcast. With each new episode, I'm inspired to learn more, grow more, do more, and be more. Thank you. Please find the VWPA podcast at veganwarriorprincessesattack.com. And also, today's episode of the Our Hen House podcast is being sponsored by our partner, A Well-Fed World. A Well-Fed World is a hunger relief and animal protection organization chipping away at two of the world's most immense, unnecessary, and unconscionable forms of suffering. The suffering of people hungry from lack of food, and the suffering of animals used and abused for food. Mending our unjust food system is a critical part of solving the world's most destructive and persistent problems. Fortunately, the plant-based foods that promote health and well-being are the same foods that conserve resources to better feed the world, while reducing greenhouse gas emissions and protecting the environment. A well-fed world provides the means for change by empowering individuals, social justice organizations, and political decision-makers to embrace the benefits of plant-based foods and farming. Learn more at awfw.org.
Our hen house is a squawking house. Our hen house is their hen house. Our hen house, ooh, it's a funky fresh house. Our hen house is your hen house.
Hi, everybody. This is Jasmine Singer here, and I am just really excited about today's show. We have some incredible guests on today's show, and I did want to tell you that since I'm currently touring around with my book tour for Always Too Much and Never Enough, we are changing things up a little bit for the next few weeks, as you might have noticed in the last few weeks. So today, you're in for a real treat, because joining us for our ramblings section is Our Hen House is Michael Harren, who you know, and Our Hen House is Eric Milano, who is the man behind the sponsorship voices at the beginning, the sultry, sexy sponsorship voices. Eric is our audio mixer and technician, and he's also a brilliant guy who's been on the show before. But anyway, I was talking to Michael and to Eric about the podcast and about how it has such an intense feminine energy, and we love that. But Michael was like, let's talk about man stuff. And so they decided that they would host a short segment that they like to call Our Hen House. And so I'm going to play that for you in just a second. And then we'll be back with Rising Anxieties, current events from the animal rights movement, and an interview that you're not going to want to miss with the amazing Kristie Middleton and Ken Botts, who are working in food policy at the Humane Society of the United States. So here to start us off is Michael Harren, and you could learn more about his work at michaelharren.com. and Eric Milano at loveloftstudio.com.
Hello, I'm Michael Harren, and joining me, or with me, right? I'm already ruining everything.
You're doing great.
That again.
You're doing great.
Hello, this is Michael Harren, and also with me is Eric Milano. Hello, Eric.
Hey, Michael. How's it going?
Great.
Beautiful.
We're here at Our Hen House.
We sure are. Or our men house, maybe.
You see what
I did there?
Yes. This is already amazing. Should we just stop there? I think that's probably the best we're going to get.
On that one right there.
So we're hanging out today on the Hen House, and maybe a quick little introduction about who we are. I'm Michael Harren. I'm a musician. You've heard me. I write the theme song for the show, and I've been a guest on the show a couple of times. And we're hanging out today. Eric, who are you?
I am a person who does post-production audio for films, television, and commercials. And you also may know my voice recently because I've been doing the reading of the sponsorship at the top of each episode. And I also do...
you're so good at that. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I also do all the editing for the Our Hen House podcasts, all three of them. And that's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm a vegan.
So, and a vegan, of course.
7 years.
Yes. Nice. We're about the same amount of time.
Oh, that's not true.
Yeah, I'm 7 or I think it'll be 8 in November.
Wow. Yeah, it's about the same.
Yeah, crazy. So Jasmine and Marianne asked us to talk about being vegan men.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a big topic.
Our first topic is grooming.
Grooming. That is kind of funny because when I told my wife that I was going to be doing an interview about grooming, she's like, "But you don't do any grooming. You don't groom." And I was like, "That's not quite true. That's not quite true, honey."
Yeah, I mean, well, she's going to learn something now.
Exactly. Thank you. What about yourself? Are you a groomer?
I'm a moderate groomer, not really. I think, like, when we were preparing for the show, we were both like, wait a minute, we don't have anything to say about this. But actually, we have a little.
I have to say, sorry to interrupt, but you have a gorgeous beard. I hope that you're going to be talking about your beard a little bit, because I don't know how you do that.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I have left on my head to groom. I'm super into my beard, as a matter of fact. Should we just go right into the beard?
Let's just talk
grooming?
about your beard.
So my favorite thing about my beard is my barber. I started going to see this barber. His name is Paul at Blind Barber in Williamsburg. They have locations. They have 3 locations in New York, 1 in LA, maybe 2 in LA.
Okay.
And so this barber, like, I was sort of like, maybe I'll grow a beard. And my friend Amy used to cut my hair, and there came a point where she was like, you know what? You're just having me shave your head at this point, and you're paying me $70. You should go to a barbershop. We can still hang out. So I was like, oh, cool, I'll go to a barbershop.
That's a good friend right there, yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice. And so I started looking for a barbershop, and actually, Discerning Brute, Joshua Catcher, recommended this place to me. And Paul was who he told me I should see. Paul is great, and he's really into my beard. So every time I go, there's this thing of, like, me saying, I don't know, I think maybe we should cut it a little shorter. And he's like, I don't agree. Look around. He's always like, look around this place. Do you see anyone else with a beard like this?
Right.
I'm like, no.
It's kind of become your thing, huh?
Yeah, I did actually cut it pretty short recently, but and I'm a little happier with it, but it's still pretty substantial. So I get it cut like I try to go every 3 weeks or a month, mostly because my hair is so balding on the top. If it gets very long, it starts looking like an ostrich, which I'm not too into. And I've been using products from Lush. I use their Kalamazoo, like, it's a face and beard wash. It makes things really soft and smell really good. And I have this is like such a quick list, a beard oil from Fanciful Fox,
right?
Which I actually got for free from the Vegan Mo's. They had a box of stuff to review.
Oh, I love the Vegan Mo's. They're great guys.
I love the Vegan Mo's. Yeah. Speaking of vegan men, we're
seriously.
everywhere. So I have this beard oil, which I will replace when it runs out, but it lasts for a really long time. So I use some of that, and sometimes I use this R&B leave-in conditioner that's actually for hair, but it's from Lush as well. And I've been putting it on my head as well. And that is my grooming.
Wow.
I wash. I take showers.
And I
days.
also have a beard. It's nowhere near as long. I keep it pretty close, but it is quite, like, rough and scratchy. I'm scratching it right now, and I'm just wondering, like, so I've never even thought about this. So if I put this stuff on my beard, it's going to make it sort of like soft, sort of like when you use conditioner in your hair?
Yeah, so here's the thing about that. The name of the leave-in conditioner is R&B from Lush, which doesn't test on animals, and all their vegan products are marked clearly.
Right.
The thing that I feel, I don't love the smell of this stuff. It's a little flowery.
Right, so not the most manly in traditional terms. Manly,
right,
yeah.
Unless it's manly in the way of, like, I smell like jasmine flowers.
I like your use of jasmine there.
Yeah, gotta work the ladies in.
Gotta get her in there.
So I think the smell of it is not amazing.
Right.
But, like, you might like, there's also this thing called Honest Amish Beard Balm that I've used, and I know it's vegan as well. Sometimes I use that. It's almost like a wax, but it does, like, make your beard really soft.
I'm looking, I didn't realize that I was looking for a soft beard, but I am now. Thank you for that.
Yeah. You know what? Now that I'm talking about my beard regimen, that Kalamazoo face and beard wash might be the thing for you because that makes it really soft. It smells really good. And I wouldn't say it's a masculine scent, but it's definitely not a feminine scent. It's a very like sort of herby smelling.
And this Kalamazoo is available at Lush.
At Lush, yeah. Slightly expensive, I think.
Right.
But it lasts a long time.
A lot of these things are. Well,
yeah, so that's pretty much my story on grooming.
Well, speaking of smells, one of my products that I wanted to share was, there's basically a very few products that I use. One of them is just soap, of course, in the shower, but the other one is deodorant. And the deodorant that I love is by a company called North Coast Organics. Have you heard of it?
I haven't. I'm writing this down as we speak.
Really great products. I believe they're available in certain Whole Foods, but also online. I usually get them online, and they're completely natural. In fact, they have only 5 ingredients that they say on their website, 5 simple edible ingredients plus essential oils.
Oh.
So if you happen to also be hungry, you could also eat this stuff. That's what I like about natural products. I don't want to be putting anything on my skin in a regular way that's not healthy for our bodies.
Yeah.
So they have a bunch of different flavors, if you will. The one I use is called Revolver. And, it's got a picture of 2 guns on it, so it's very manly.
Excellent, excellent.
And it smells sort of like, I like to say it smells like if man balls smelled good. I feel like this is what they would smell like.
That is a great description.
You feel like they should use that on their website?
Yeah, I think you should suggest that to them. But
maybe
copyright it first, just in case they like it.
Yeah, so it's like, it's not floral, as you were saying, or it just has a sort of musk and yet still smells good. My wife loves it. I don't know.
No, I love that description. I have to say, even as a gay man, I'm a little like, ooh. But in the best possible way.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent question. Like, do gay men like the smell of balls? Straight men, I do enjoy the smell of a woman's private parts. So, but that's an interesting question. I don't know. Can you answer that? I don't know.
I think
if we're going too far, we can totally cut this out.
I love that we're taking it in this direction. I think I associate, like, if it's the smell of if the balls are attached to someone who I feel connected to.
Oh, I love that answer.
answer. then I would probably enjoy the smell.
Yes. Oh, that's such a great answer. Yeah, I love that.
It's funny. My friend just texted me, and I don't think I should reveal his name because he may not want people to know that he and I coined this phrase together.
Yeah.
Or a sexual term called truffle dogging.
Truffle dogging. Wow.
Yeah, it's basically like nuzzling down in that region that we were just discussing.
What is that? There's a word for that. Oh, the taint? Is that?
Yeah, that a taint could definitely be involved. I think balls are involved in truffle dogging.
Right.
Like anything in like the crotchular area.
Oh, it's sort of like when 2 dogs first meet and they sort of go for that area.
Yeah. Or, like a dog that's looking for truffles, which that could bring up a whole nother thing. Like, are truffles vegan?
Oh, I believe they are.
No, it's pigs.
It's actually pigs. I was going to say pigs are the ones that search for truffles, and truffles are actually a form of mushroom.
It all comes back to veganism, doesn't it?
It all does.
So I'm excited about this good ball smelling deodorant.
Yes.
I honestly have yet to find a vegan deodorant that I really like.
Yeah, this one is great. And again, like when you're not using these heavy chemicals, a lot of people have the complaint sometimes that they don't last as long or they're not as effective. I find this one very effective. It's not like, when I used to use like Right Guard. That stuff, like I could put it on and like for the next 4 days, my underarms would be dry and as long as I wasn't doing any heavy activity. But
that seems like not healthy to me.
Exactly. And, I don't feel like your arms should feel so dry. It desiccates them, to use a big word.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
We'll include the definition of that in the show notes at ourhenhouse.org.
Yes, we will, for anyone who didn't understand that.
Awesome. Anything else in your grooming regimen?
Yes, I was going to say there is a toothpaste that I really enjoy using, which is made by a company called Living Libations, which is on livinglibations.com. And the toothpaste I use is called the Frankincense Truth Paste.
Whoa.
Yes. I use a very small amount of it. And I basically, again, just like the fact that it's all natural ingredients. I mean, if you look at the ingredients on a bottle of toothpaste, 99% of it, you have no clue what it is. It's just long chemical words. And I just don't want to put that in my mouth every day.
Yeah, that's what she said.
She did say that. She
like
did
a
say that.
lot of times. I'm pretty sure she said that a lot.
Until I started using this toothpaste, she kept saying
Yeah.
that. And they also sell a really cool floss.
Oh, nice.
Which it's called Smart Floss. It's made by Dr. Tongues. And you can also find it on Amazon. And there's something about it, it's not so, it's almost like more like using a rubber band or something. There's something very smooth. A rubber band's a bad analogy, but there's something that's very like smooth and gentle on your gums. And also doubles as a cat toy. My cats also love to play with it after I'm done flossing my teeth.
Only after the flossing, though.
Only after. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so those are two. And then the only other thing that I do use is Dr. Bronner's soap. Very big fan of that.
Nice.
Which is also vegan. All these things are vegan. The North Coast Organics deodorant has also been certified by both PETA and Vegan Action Certified. And there you go. That's my grooming list.
That is amazing. I'm curious, who went vegan first, you or your wife, or were you already vegan when you met?
Yes, I was already vegan. My wife is actually not 100% vegan. Mm-hmm. She would not define herself as that, but our home and my daughter is 100% vegan, and so she's very supportive of it. I definitely went vegan before I met her, basically as a result of my cats and a certain movie called Fresh, which is not about veganism, but does get into some factory farm footage.
Oh.
And I'd never had a pet before my whole life, and I'd recently gotten these 3 abandoned kittens that were 1 day old, with their umbilical cord still attached. And I raised them with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and just came to see that, whoa, animals, they're beings. They're in the ways that matter, they're just like me. So that combined with seeing factory farm footage really put me over the edge. And I was like, no, homie, don't play that. There's no way. This has to end. I'm not doing this.
So was it a quick change for you, or did you take some time to go vegan?
I'd say it was I was working on this film, so I was editing it over the course of maybe a week or two, seeing this footage over and over again. And I remember at the time, it was hard for me to say, like, this is it. I'm never going to eat anything again. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do this for now. I'm going to try it. And so that happened over the course of maybe a week. And once I did it, that sort of allows you to drop all the fears once you see that it's not so hard.
Right.
And that it's actually beautiful and helps you. Yeah, it's funny because there's actually a period where I did not feel good on a vegan diet, where I was like, I think it was some people have this adjustment period where I felt lethargic, I felt gassy, I felt just blah. And I was so committed to it. I was like, well, I guess I'm just gonna be unhealthy for the rest of my life. I really had that feeling, like I just couldn't go back. I just was like, I'm not gonna do this to my beautiful cats. It's how I saw the rest of the animals. And so because I had that devotion, because even though I felt like I was unhealthy, because I had that devotion, it allowed me to get over that. It only lasted like maybe a month, something like that. And then I started to feel amazing. And it was really that devotion that allowed me to do it. And I can see that many people who don't have that motivation or a reason for it could just be left by the wayside. And there you have it.
Yeah. That's kind of cool. I didn't know your vegan story.
Yeah, that's
it's like a cult. What's your vegan story? So like,
and what is yours?
Oh, mine is like so long and drawn out. It took me like years.
Okay, yeah.
In a short version, when I was like 18 or 19, I went vegetarian, and then I became an animal rights activist, and then I became an alcoholic and started eating meat again, and like blew the whole thing off until probably like right before I moved to New York from Texas. I was on my podcast, I was interviewing some people who were protesting the Chinese consulate in Houston for the way they're importing like dog and cat fur and not labeling it properly. So I was interviewing these people. There were like 3 or 4 women, and I was trying to be all like cool with them. So I said, "Oh yeah, I used to be a vegetarian and an animal rights activist," and they looked at me so horrified. And one of them said, "Used to be? What happened?" And I was like, it hit me that I was like, I have absolutely no reason for like, I totally believe in all of this, and I'm not doing it, you know?
Right.
So,
right.
And partly it took a long time because I was moving and I had no money and was literally like pretty poor when I got to New York, like extremely poor. So like I was working at like doing music at kids' birthday parties, and if they had free pizza, I was like, I don't care what's on that pizza, I'm eating that today.
Right.
But eventually I went vegan.
Yeah.
And it was for that reason. Like, you don't have to. Like, it's all this violence that you can just say, oh, I'm not going to do that now.
Yeah, and that sort of reminds me of, we were talking that this is a conversation from the vegan man's perspective. This sort of saying, no, I am not. It's sort of like this, at least the masculine energy. Obviously, men and women both have masculine and female energies, but this is sort of what we in our culture call a masculine energy. It's sort of like the hero, the person who says, no, I am not going to do this. I'm going to save these innocent beings. I'm going to, and that to me is sort of, it's funny to me that our culture sees veganism as sissy or weak, when really what it all came for me, and also it sounds like for you, is this willingness to stand up and just be like, no, this is not happening. Not on my watch, buddy.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I have also experienced that sort of, and being gay too, I think there's a part of me, my whatever internalized homophobia or whatever I have that wants to be like, like especially part of my time when I wasn't vegetarian anymore, there was part of me that wanted to be like, yeah, I don't care about, like in whatever I perceive to be like a masculine way to be like, oh, I don't care about animals anymore.
Right.
Like, that's just stupid shit. Like, I don't know, like whatever sort of warped perception of masculinity I had at that time.
Sure.
But I think as a whole, our society really does. And I'm like, the people much smarter than I have discussed this, like Carol Adams' Sexual Politics of Meat, that whole, like the whole idea of the way that meat eating is like, give a sign like it's a masculine trait.
Yeah. It's such a superficially, it's really about the dominance, like, like I'm going to dominate this creature that has no ability to fight back. It's like, it's the weakest dominance that there could be.
Yeah.
And really it feels like the real strength comes from someone who's willing to not dominate and to allow everyone to be just as they are. Yeah,
and also to stand up and say, because as hesitant as I am to like tell non-vegans, I think what you're doing is wrong. Right. I mean, that's what we're doing by not participating in this thing that everyone around us is doing.
Just by doing it, because it's so counterculture, just the act of doing it is a protest in itself and is seen as so radical.
Yeah, that shit ain't weak.
No, sorry.
Amazing. So what do you think? Should we turn things back over to the hens?
Let's do that. Our Hen House is over.
Our Man House. I think we should start our own podcast.
Totally.
Yeah, perfect. Bye, bro.
Bye, bro.
That was Eric Milano and Michael Harren. Love them. And I also love our Rising Anxieties segment. And I'm just always so enamored with Marianne's ability to just be so spot on with her commentary about the way the animal rights movement is being perceived by the opposition and by mainstream media. And so here's Marianne with this week's Rising Anxieties.
Anxieties continue to rise. Our first article is from the Daily Mail in the UK, and it's really pretty fun. It's not that bad. In fact, a lot of the article and the comments on the article are not that bad. But what happened is so bad. All right, this is the title of the article. Are these the fussiest wedding guests ever? Vegan bride's family refused to go to her reception because she is only serving plant-based food. I mean, seriously? You won't go to somebody's wedding because you're not going to get meat? These are probably among those people who believe they've never had vegan food. They think it's God knows what they think. There were, as I said, a lot of very sympathetic comments, very sympathetic to this bride, which I was happy to see. Her mother was not particularly pleased with her. She sympathized with her personally, but she was annoyed that she had to put up with all of she wasn't exactly siding with the relatives, but she just didn't want to be bothered. Among the comments she got, which were not so friendly, dietary preferences are not comparable to ethical principles. Most people wouldn't make principles they hold truly important just to satisfy someone's preferences. Well, no, dietary preferences are comparable to ethical principles. That's the whole point here. This is just, I think that's the classic rising anxiety that people just don't understand. It happens all the time to me. People just don't understand that I consider this an ethical situation, and they just think that's what I want and that's what they want. And because they're fine with that, that means they're liberal people. All right, more comments. Kathy replied, explaining that the relatives felt her daughter should make the same effort to cater to their tastes as they do for her, Kathy being the mother. I am trying to be supportive, but I don't really understand why my daughter can't allow a menu choice to try and please everyone, she said. The people who have refused told me that they are fed up having to make concessions for my daughter and provide vegan food at any parties or events. Not that they have thrown many. This family is not surviving this article. All right. And then not have their own tastes catered for when the roles are reversed. I mean, seriously, don't you understand that vegans don't eat meat and meat eaters do eat vegan food? It's different, folks. Even aside from the ethical principles, it's different. Other annoying comments. It may not be the meal, but more having other principles forced on them that's annoying guests. Actually, I think that's really hitting the nail on the head. That's also the mother's surmise, and I bet that's the truth. They don't really care that they're not going to get the food they want. They just don't like the idea that somebody is bringing this whole topic up and implying to them that their own food choices are wrong. Yeah, that's really what's going on here. All right, another one from a guest. Sorry, but if I was a guest, I'd be dreading the meal, she said. I'd come to be polite. Yeah, right. I can tell you're really polite, honey. I'd come to be polite, but the meal would put a slight dampener on the occasion. Yeah, nothing like, eating a delicious vegan meal to dampen my day. Another comment. I suppose people who are maybe going to have to come a long way and shell quite a lot one way and another might feel that they're not even going to get a meal they would really enjoy out of it. They don't feel like bothering. Yeah, that's probably true. I can't help but feeling, I go to weddings too. If you don't want to go to the wedding, don't go to the wedding. If you don't want to buy the gift, don't buy the gift. I find it annoying too, but I would go if they were giving me vegan food. I can't help feeling that a bride who really cares about her guests enjoying their day would want to provide the sort of food they would enjoy. She can have a vegan meal for herself and anyone else so inclined. Again, that is the classic rising anxiety. People just insist on not recognizing that it is an ethical issue. The second article is called Friends, and it's from my favorite site, Meeting Place, and it's by Lisa Keefe, who's the editor of Meeting Place, the magazine. And she always strikes me as sort of odd. How did she end up in this business? There's a discomfort at the center of all of her hypocrisy. Anyway, she starts off talking about how there's a high rate of suicide among veterinarians, which I certainly didn't know about. And she surmises that maybe it's because, it's a very painful business. You have to kill animals and you really care about animals, and then you have to deal with people who often blame you for things that really may not be your fault, and are in terrible pain. And I thought it was a good point, and I hadn't really thought about it. So veterinarians and we're talking about small animal vets here, they go through a lot treating their patients. And then she contrasts them with her childhood best friend, who raised steers for 4-H. And when the writer here, Lisa, found out that her friend, Zelda, the 4-H girl, was perfectly comfortable with the fact that they kill her beloved steer, which Lisa had heretofore not realized, she was shocked. And then she got over her shock when she told me how much she'd sold him for, $800. There's a price to be paid for ethics and compassion, and apparently for Lisa, it's $800. And this is all an intro to what she's really going to talk about, and this is her issue. Bridging the gap between the emotional connection to animals and the commercial connection to livestock is a hot topic in the meat industry. If the increasingly urban consumer better understood how the food got to their plates, the thinking goes, there would be less of the aggressive industry bashing that's become so common from the animal rights activists and their donors. However, Lisa clearly is not on board with this thinking. That's what's so interesting about her. She's actually specifically referencing something called agrotourism, where they set up these farms and they're very, very cleaned up. But basically they really are farms where the animals are going to be killed. And they invite people to visit them and try to convince them and show them that this is all great. And she specifically references one, Fair Oaks Farms in Indiana. And as she says, turn the business into entertainment and the reality is a little easier to take. And she goes on to point out she has her reservations. She said, on the one hand, seeing is believing. Consumers who see hogs being gently handled at Fair Oaks Farms probably are likely to assign that new knowledge to pork producers generally and feel positively about how that bacon gets to the supermarket. Well, for one thing, obviously, these consumers are being deceived because hogs are not gently handled at any place other than Fair Oaks Farm. So she's really talking about consumer deception. So it's not that seeing is believing; it's that seeing in this case is believing and being deceived. But anyway, leaving that whole problem aside, she still has reservations, even if this really were the truth that consumers were being introduced to at this farm. She goes on and says, on the other hand, getting up close and personal with the animals, especially, say, asking a group of school children to name an adorable Chihuahua-sized piglet, would serve to reinforce the anthropomorphism that vexes the meat industry, not to mention veterinarians. In the first place, what does this have to do with veterinarians? Her point about veterinarians wasn't any problem with anthropomorphism as it was a problem with having to kill animals. But anyway, she likes to call this anthropomorphism, and what we're really talking about is compassion. Just read it that way. Getting up close and personal with the animals would serve to reinforce the compassion that vexes the meat industry. Yeah, maybe it would. I would like to think that these places may be doing the meat industry some harm, and I think there's a good chance that Lisa might be right. She's anxious about it anyway. And finally, you might have, if you listened to last week's podcast, and if you didn't, why not? You might have heard me talk about this article. It was an article, I forget exactly where I got it, but it was covered in a lot of places. And it had to do with the situation in Georgia, not the state of Georgia, but the country of Georgia in the Caucasus. I don't know how you say it, but that used to be part of the Soviet Union. And anyway, it was the title of that article was Patrons of Vegan Cafe Are Pelted with Meat. And there was this story about how this vegan cafe in Tbilisi was attacked by these people who were throwing meat at the patrons. And so this guy who writes for a paper in Maryland, I think, the Herald Mail, has decided to write a funny column about that. Meat Wars, the new hate crime. And he thinks it's hilarious. And as he says, according to reports, the attack began Sunday evening at the Bohemian Kiwi Cafe, a popular spot for foreigners and Georgians alike, when witnesses say more than a dozen men carrying slabs of meat on skewers suddenly showed up and began pelting patrons with grilled meat, sausages, and fish. And Tim, writing this article, goes on to say, hilariously, now most of us would have been pleased if it had happened to us. Free meat is free meat. But it horrified the vegans. And he goes on to say how these attackers also started to smoke, and he points out that smoking is the kicker. A vegan might survive a brat to the chops, but when you follow it up by puffing on a cig in their presence, well, that's just spitting on the corpse. Of course, no one deserves to be intimidated when they're noshing on some fennel seed, but neither is anyone going to feel sorry for them, because there is a segment of vegans who are such riotous, in-your-face scolds about what you choose to eat that, at the very least, it's hard not to smirk. So to vegans, it's perfectly acceptable to throw paint on someone wearing a fur coat, but how dare anyone slap them upside the head with a pork chop? I mean, seriously? Seriously? I'm not even going to comment on this one. Oh, my God.
Before we get to our interview today, I do want to remind you that Our Hen House is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So if you like what you're listening to, I hope you'll consider supporting our efforts to change the world for animals. And just as we are trying new things this summer, we are always bringing you new and exciting content from the world of animal rights. And we also have the Animal Law podcast that Marianne hosts, and the Teaching Jasmine How to Cook Vegan podcast, which I host along with Chef Laura Delhauer. And so if you go to ourhenhouse.org, you could click on donate and become a flock member and support our efforts by either being a monthly contributor for $15 a month or a yearly contributor of $150, both of which would make you a flock member, and you would get a tote bag that is ethically sourced and vegan made and touts our tagline, change the world for animals, on it. And you will also get access to the Facebook flock group, which is just a really fun private group where the conversation is always enlightening. And you'll be the first ones to be in the know and get the inside scoop from the coop. But most importantly, you will know for yourself that you are helping to keep our media and our content free for people who can't necessarily make donations, and for people who want to have access to the many, many years of podcasting and online magazine writing that we have at ourhenhouse.org. So thanks in advance for becoming a flock member. And if you're already a flock member, thank you so much. And if you, regardless of whether you can or cannot make a donation to support our efforts, another really great way of supporting our efforts is by leaving us a friendly review on iTunes or Stitcher or however you listen to this. So please do. It would help us so much to get the word out there about our efforts to change the world for animals, and it would just take you a minute. Also, I do want to let you know again that my book, which is Always Too Much and Never Enough, is available wherever books are sold, and you could learn more about it by going to jasminesinger.com. There's no E on Jasmine. It's just JASMINSINGER.com. And I am currently on tour. And so if you go to the events page, you'll see some of the places I'm visiting. But this week I will be in Spokane, and then I'll be in Montana, in Bozeman and Livingston. And then I will be in Denver. I also have coming up Portland, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia, and Connecticut, and several other places as well. But those are the ones that are coming up really soon. So go to jasminesinger.com and click on events, and you can find out more over there. And I'm just really honored that our guests today are joining us, because this is a subject that we love to talk about. And we'll be speaking with Kristie Middleton and Ken Botts. And Marianne had a chat with them, and I just think that you will find the work that they're doing in food policy over at the Humane Society of the United States to be really fascinating. Kristie Middleton is the Senior Director of Food Policy for the Humane Society of the United States. She has helped dozens of corporations, hospitals, and other institutions improve the plight of farm animals through humane-minded purchasing programs. Today, she oversees the HSUS's meat reduction efforts. She has worked with some of the nation's largest school districts, including Los Angeles Unified School District, Detroit Public Schools, and Boston Public Schools, to implement Meatless Monday. Her work has been covered by national media, including the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and CNN. Ken Botts, who will be joining Kristie, has over 35 years of food service experience. He was previously with the University of North Texas, where he helped to launch the nation's first vegan dining hall. His work has been covered by USA Today, ABC News, and Food Service Director magazine. In 2014, he joined the Humane Society of the United States as a food policy manager. Since then, he has helped food service leaders around the world meet the demand for more sustainable dining through menu design, culinary education, and concept development. His mission in life is to help make the world a better place, one plate at a time. Learn more at hsus.org.
Welcome to our hen house, Kristie and Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us on.
It's my pleasure. I'm very excited about the work that your department is doing at HSUS. It's really changing the world in a lot of ways. Just start off by familiarizing the audience with some of the accomplishments of your department at HSUS.
Well, we are really excited to be able to work with institutions. So Ken and I both are in the Farm Animal Protection Division at HSUS, where we work on helping institutions with reducing the amount of meat they're serving and getting more plant-based options on their menus. Now, Ken, he'll share his story, but he's a 30-year food service veteran, so he brings a tremendous amount of experience to the table and really understands how these food service operations work, whereas my background is in animal protection. But I was really excited to come to work at HSUS because I recognize the amounts of change that we would be able to accomplish for animals by working with institutions on a variety of policies, whether it would be to improve animal welfare within the food supply chain, or to create laws and legislation, or to tangibly reduce the amount of meat that's being served. So that's what we do on our team. And I lead the team and help with getting institutional policies, and was very excited to work with Los Angeles Unified School District, which is the second largest school district in the nation, to get it to do a Meatless Monday. And certainly we have worked with literally hundreds of other schools, hospitals, colleges, and universities, and others to do Meatless Monday.
And am I right that your department works on, as you mentioned, reduction of particularly cruel practices in the supply line, such as battery cage, gestation crates, all of those campaigns, but you're not personally working on those campaigns?
Right. When I first came to HSUS, I was working on those campaigns, but one of the things that we recognize is if we're going to end factory farming, we have to reduce the amount of meat people are eating. I'm personally vegan, and I encourage everybody who cares about animals to do so. But we realized that if we wanted to dramatically reduce the animals who are on factory farms, we had to help institutions with reducing the amount of meat they serve. So Ken and I, although some of the institutions we work with are interested in doing cage-free eggs or higher welfare animal products, we will give them the resources to enact those practices. But our primary focus is on helping them with getting more plant-based options on plates and reducing the amount of animal ingredients they're serving.
So Ken, why don't you fill us in a little bit about Kristie's given a few examples of the successes you've had, but how broad is this? How many institutions have you worked with and entered into some kind of an agreement with?
Well, when I came on board just a little over a year and a half ago, my focus was colleges and universities. And so since I've been with HSUS, we've worked with over 15 colleges, universities, and hospitals now who are trying to add more plant-based options. And what we do is we go out and we train chefs and whatnot. But in that time, we've trained over 300 chefs. And that's just in our higher education project. That's not including our K through 12, working with the military and other institutions.
Yeah, I really want to hear about this chef training. I want to talk about Meatless Mondays, of course, but let's start. You mentioned one of the campaigns that I'm particularly excited about, and that's your chef training program. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I heard one of our state folks had heard you mention it on the show, and it was the training that we did at CU Boulder a couple weeks ago. And this started back in January of 2014, just about 2 months after I joined HSUS. And we had met the chef at Harvard, Chef Martin Breslin. He came to one of our events and asked us if we could help him and his team learn how to make plants the center of the plate, working with plant proteins, whole foods, and really get in there and show their team how to make this food taste great. And so one thing led to another, and that became what is now our what we call food forward culinary experience. And we go into the institution. We're in the kitchen with them. As a matter of fact, today I'm at The Ohio State. We're doing a training with them, and usually it's typically about 20 chefs, knives and cutting boards, and we go all the way from breakfast through dessert and show them how to make this food really amazing.
Yeah, it's really very exciting work. I'm sure. Do you find that one of the roadblocks in schools or institutions adopting vegan practices is that the chefs don't really are intimidated by it?
Yeah, I don't know if it's intimidated so much. It's just a lack of knowledge, because when they hear the word vegan or plant-based, or, there's so many different words out there to describe what we're doing, they're confused. And so immediately they think, well, what do I do with tofu? Or how do I make a veggie burger taste great? But when we get in there and we show them that you work with everything, like, we're teaching them, for example, how to take chickpea juice, or what we all know as aquafaba, and turn it into a meringue, they're just floored. And they realize that it's not that hard. And in 2 days, we take folks that are a little confused about the recipes, and we show them how to take this and make it great. And they leave raving fans after we're done with the class.
Yeah, that's great. I have to admit, I'm still pretty floored by the whole aquafaba thing. It's like I don't know how that all happened, but it's pretty exciting. But yeah. Like you mentioned, like they're not sure. The words can be a little off-putting, or I'm not sure that's exactly what you said, but what words do you use? Do you use vegan? Do you use plant-based? Like, these words have become so important to us in how we do our communication. Which do you find to be the most effective way to communicate?
For higher education in most institutions, plant-based is really the better option. And the reason for that is vegan, as we know, it's a lifestyle choice. And what they're doing is they're working with food. And so the whole foods plant-based approach to this is really more of a comfortable dialogue to have with them. When you say the word vegan in a lot of these institutions, it's got that political feeling to it, as a movement. And that makes them a little bit nervous, quite honestly. And so we go in there and we just show them how to work with recipes, food that they're familiar with, and plant-based seems to be the best word that they like to use.
So, Kristie, tell us a little bit about Meatless Mondays. That's a more a somewhat different approach. And how have you worked with institutions to adopt Meatless Monday campaigns? And exactly what is a Meatless Monday?
Right. Well, that's a good question. And Meatless Monday is not an initiative that we started. It was actually originated during World War I as a resource conservation campaign. It was brought back during World War II for the same reason. So Americans were encouraged by the U.S. government to go meat-free 1 day a week to support the troops abroad. And then in 2003, really influenced by the Surgeon General's recommendation that we reduce the intake of saturated fat and cholesterol by 15%, Sid Lerner, who founded the Monday campaigns, realized that there was this throwback to Meatless Monday that could be applied as a way to get people to reduce the amount of meat they serve. So he teamed up with the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health and launched Meatless Monday. And it has grown into a phenomenon since then, as Kaiser Permanente put it, with literally hundreds of schools, hospitals, colleges and universities, and other institutions getting on board. So it's not a program that the Humane Society started, but one we saw as having great potential to be one tool in a toolbox of resources to get institutions institutions to tangibly reduce the amount of meat they're serving. And really, institutions, when we're working with them, we encourage them to do what works best within their framework. Some are going entirely meat-free on Mondays, like Los Angeles Unified and countless others across the country, and others are using it as a way to highlight their plant-based options and encourage guests to participate. One of our partners is Palomar Health Hospital, which Ken and his team have worked extensively with to teach them how to create delicious plant-based food. And they have used Meatless Monday as an incentive to get their guests to dine with them. So they do a rewards program where if they buy, I believe it's 4 meat-free meals on consecutive Mondays, they get the 5th one free. And they also use marketing materials to boost participation and encourage guests to give the meat-free options a try.
Do you think schools, do you ever wish that it had been a little bigger? I mean, you didn't invent it, but, like somehow it had been plant-based Mondays or, so you didn't necessarily have dairy and eggs in there, and maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday or something.
Right.
But you mentioned that you have other initiatives that are bigger, but do you ever kind of regret that it's a little small in today's day because we've gotten further?
Yeah, well, we're working with institutions all across the country. So we even worked with Kansas City Public Schools in the heart of the country to do a meatless day. So it may be a stepping stone for some of these institutions to add more such options, but I see it as having great potential. Now, I personally did not become vegan overnight. I was one of those who gave up red meat and then chicken and then became vegetarian and then I became vegan. And so I see this as a foot in the door for people to see how easy and comfortable it can be to get on that path. So it doesn't have to be that all or nothing prospect that many people feel like it has to be. There's a little bit of gray area where we do give people the permission to make that transition in a way that is sustainable for them. Because I've read the research from Humane Research Council, and there's a lot of recidivism with people going back to eating meat for a variety of reasons. So we feel like if this is a good way to get institutions, one, to just dramatically reduce the amount of meat they're serving by 15 to 20%, that is good for animals. And it also shows them that there are a lot of delicious foods that they serve that just happen to be meat-free, like a pasta primavera or a protein-packed chili, and it will help encourage them to do more of that throughout the week. And we've definitely seen that happen.
Yeah, I guess it seems small to me, and to other people it seems huge. I mean, I know to the industry it certainly seems huge, and they're horrified by it. So that's always a good sign. But what is it like when you go into one of the, like, say, going into the Kansas City schools or someplace else, where they're really not particularly predisposed to this message? What is it like? What kind of reactions do you get? How do you set up the appointments? Are they eager to find out about this, or do you get hostility?
I would say by and large, the institutions who we go and meet with are already interested, or else they just wouldn't engage with us. Some of them are curious, and some of them do have some tough questions for us, but they see this trend coming down the pipeline. Ken and I read the food service industry publications, and last year, Food Service Director magazine at the end of the year said Food Service Director is the trade publication to the food management world, and they said that the top trend in 2015 was that vegan went mainstream. And it's not just for the vegetarian and vegan guests, that everybody is looking to eat vegan some of the time. So the food service industry, if they're smart, they see this as something they need to be prepared to answer. And so they may be a little apprehensive at first, but when they recognize that we're there as a resource and we want to help them meet this growing demand, they really are appreciative. And they certainly want to continue leading the field and being on the cutting edge rather than having to scramble and respond to it a little later.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like, I've found this the whole time I've been involved in animal issues, that actually they're probably more willing to use the word vegan than we are. Like other people are, we're nervous that it's going to put people off, and then they seem to be a little bit more comfortable with it sometimes than we're afraid they're going to be. So that's really exciting to hear. How many facilities have adopted Meatless Mondays that you know of?
We've worked with over 300 institutions from K through 12 school districts, hospitals, colleges, and universities, and even some corporate cafeterias. But given that it is its own movement, there are certainly many others out there, I'm sure, that are doing it that we just don't even know about. In fact, Sodexo, which is one of the world's largest food service companies, where it operates hospital, college, and university, and other institutional food service operations. In 2011, they launched Meatless Monday with 900 of their hospitals. Now, they don't all have to participate, but they opted to participate, and then they rolled it out to schools and colleges. So if they want to partake in Meatless Monday, they can. So we don't really have a good number of all of the institutions that are out there participating, but HSUS has worked with some 300 of them.
That's a really huge number, and I'm sure you're right that it's a lot larger than that. Ken, I know that you helped launch the nation's first all-vegan dining hall at a college, which just astounds everybody who hears about it, and really astounds them when they hear where it is. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was back in 2010, and it was in response to student requests at the University of North Texas, where I was working in dining services at the time. And we had 5 dining halls there, and we decided that, there's enough interest, not only from our students, who are our main customer on any university, but also we were seeing that the trend wasn't becoming a trend anymore, that it was starting to become more of the norm. With the ask becoming popular at institutions around the United States. And so we took one entire dining hall that wasn't doing so well. It was seeing about 175 transactions a day. We spent the entire summer transitioning it, making it look nice. But then at the same time, we hired a brand new chef, Chef Wanda White, who's from Texas, and put some plant-based recipes in front of her and said, let's make this fly. And so 3 months later, we opened it up. And to our astonishment, the university was just flooded with interest. In the first 3 weeks, we saw $165,000 worth of free earned media come through, free publicity for the university. Everything from USA Today to ABC News, and then, of course, the industry magazines were all talking about this because it happened in Texas, the cattle country. And the most important part of that, though, was the student response. And that student response was incredible. We went from 175 transactions a day when we were considering closing this dining hall to over 500 transactions a day on the first 3 weeks of opening. So it was incredible. And that's continued to grow year over year. Now you fast-tracked 5 years, almost 6 years now that it's been there. And the last time I checked, it was doing about 1,700 transactions a day, which is really unusual for an operation to see that kind of growth.
That's really cool. What is it like in general to go to college if you're a vegan these days? I mean, aside from at North Texas, is there a lot out there for college students to eat?
Quite honestly, I think there is, but the students sometimes need help seeing that. For example, as I mentioned, we're at The Ohio State today doing some training, and I spoke with the food service director there, and just by or organically, about 75% of their menu, including side items and entrees and everything, tends to be meatless. But the students don't see that. And so I think that a lot of times it's an educational process. Now, of course, there are other universities that tend to still serve the traditional cafeteria type food, and we see that out there. But for the most part, I think that universities really see this coming, and certainly they're trying to respond to that in a big way.
Yeah, it would be a lot better going to school these days than the 10 million years ago I went. But, we hear all the time that the number of animals killed for food is going down. I mean, I'm not sure that's true, and maybe you can confirm or deny that. But I'm also wondering whether, if it is the case, the other thing we hear is that meat reduction, not veganism, is responsible for that. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, we see that the universities around the country are responding to the meat reduction question from their students. But I think what's driving that is the student demand. Again, you've got like your vegan and vegetarian clubs that tend to be the vocal minority on campus, and the universities are responding to that. And so I think that in doing so, we're seeing meat reduction happen. But ultimately, once the universities start creating these delicious recipes and they see the students respond in such a positive way, they want to do more of that. And so whether you call it meat reduction or veganism, it's happening and it's saving animals.
So Kristie, would you agree that meat reduction is happening, is responsible for the number of animals killed for food going down, and is leading to further meat reduction and maybe even veganism for some people? Is that the trend you see?
Right. Well, we know that we went from eating about 100 million animals in the 1950s to eating over 9.5 billion animals in 2007. And that number has started falling for the first time in literally decades, now eating about 500,000 fewer animals than we did in 2007. And that is with population growth as well as with about the same number of people, according to research from things like Vegetarian Resource Group, which indicate that roughly the same number of us are claiming to be vegetarian and vegan. So I'm sure there are a lot of factors involved, but I do feel strongly that by working with these institutions to phase out some of their meat and reduce the amount of meat they're serving and get more plant-based options on the menu, that it is having an impact. In fact, just today, our CEO, Wayne Pacelli, published a blog on the humane economy, his new book that just recently came out, and how it's cropping up in all sorts of unexpected places. Just last week, I was over at Stanford University, which Ken and I met about a year ago, and they're doing some really interesting work on campus to reduce the amount of meat that's being served through different devices, not necessarily a meatless Monday, but things like using choice architecture, which is helping direct their guests to choosing some of the healthier options, which are vegan, which are plant-based. They're also doing meat and mushroom blends. So while I might not eat it, or many of your listeners might not eat it, it is a way to reduce the amount of meat they're serving. And they're also working with some of the new startup companies like Impossible Foods to showcase some of the interesting and innovative alternatives to meat that are out there. We've worked with Compass Group, which is the world's largest food service provider. And in addition to doing a flexitarian program and offering a vegan concept, meaning a vegan restaurant at its accounts that are interested in bringing that to their campus, they are also employing the menus of change strategies, which indicate that they're trying to create healthier, more sustainable menu options. And we know that those happen to be plant-based. It's not just us that's saying it. It's institutions like the Harvard School of Public Health, the Culinary Institute of America, and this leading group of researchers, scientists, physicians that they're partnering with. And so they are creating their own goals to reduce the amount of meat they're serving. They're not becoming vegetarian or vegan, even though they are incorporating more of those options, but they're trying to find innovative ways to reduce the amount of meat they're serving, which I think is really exciting.
No, it's definitely, obviously it's incredibly exciting and really great to see these trends. But the thing I wanted to, most of the listeners of Our Hen House, I think, are animal rights vegans. And of course, it makes perfect sense if your sole motivation for not eating animals is health or environmental, that reduction, makes perfect sense without going all the way vegan. I think it's people who are animal rights vegans, though, struggle with the rationale of why it's better to kill few animals than a lot of animals. I mean, obviously it's better, but clearly it would be better not to kill any at all. We all have, well, I don't know whether you have, but so many of us have struggled with that kind of contradiction. And I just wondering, what do you think how does the meat reduction message work for people who do care about animals, but they don't want to stop eating them completely? The messaging is just so difficult to struggle with.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And I have been vegan for coming up on 20 years and have been involved in working in animal protection my entire career. My first job out of college was in animal protection. And so I do think that it can be a struggle sometimes to make these what we might feel like are personal compromises. But in the end, what I feel like is most important is what we're doing to tangibly help animals rather than being dogmatic. And of course, I do agree that we need to be talking to people about why they should care about the moral implications of their diet choices. And we do that. But that messaging doesn't work for everybody. So how can we make a message or have a message that is going to resonate with folks? And we know that this, it doesn't have to be all or nothing message can work. Now, I remember reading an interview with Tal Ronan, who is the chef and famous for writing the book The Conscious Cook and being Oprah Winfrey's personal chef. And of course, he's the mastermind behind Crossroads. And he talked about people who would say, well, I could be vegan except for the cheese. And he would say in response, well, be vegan except for the cheese.
Exactly,
then find a way to phase it out. But just because you can't do 100% doesn't mean that you shouldn't do something. And so that's what we're encouraging these institutions to do, to find something that works for them.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful to find the messaging that works in that area because it's a struggle. I think it's something we've all struggled with in trying to advocate for what we believe in and not go back on what we believe in, but still create change, still be realistic about creating change. And speaking of creating change, what can people do, whether they're students or advocates in other areas? What can they, if they work for a company that has a cafeteria, what can they do to get more vegan food?
Yeah, I think personally the best thing they can do really is to ask. And the ask has to come in a variety of ways, but ultimately the ask has to go to the decision maker. So, we have the opportunity in all of our institutions, whether it's K through 12 or higher education or even a hospital, where we deal with that and we help coach these folks sometimes on how to make that happen for their campus. And the ask has to be realistic. But I think the number one point is that it has to be that ask has to be going to the person who's going to ultimately say, yeah, this is a great idea. And so we've been successful with universities around the country with that type of a model, if you will. For example, Arizona State University, when I first joined HSUS, had a student who wanted more options, and dining services there really wanted to do that, but they didn't know how. And so between the student and the food service director, we went in, we helped them design a menu, we helped them put a name on the concept, and fast forward that to a year now that they've been in operation, that one location that they created that they were kind of thinking might not work all the way has become one of their most popular stations, and they've got it on all 4 campuses and 7 dining halls now. So, it goes back to what you were saying about starting small. Maybe it's just a meatless Monday, or maybe it's meat reduction, but ultimately it's those students and the end customer who's looking for that type of food that's going to drive the success of that program.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I hope everybody listening to this who does have anything to do with a cafeteria follows it. And I really appreciate your saying, go to the person in charge who can make the decision. It's easy to complain to the person who's dishing out the food, who is at the cashier. That's not going to do any good.
Mm-hmm. They can't do anything.
You have to put a little bit more into it than that. But I just find all of the work that you're doing very exciting, and I really hope that it grows and grows and grows, and that and I'm sure it will. And so many terrific programs. And I thank you so much for joining me today at our Hen House, Kristie and Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marian. And if I can just add to what Ken said, one of the things that he's done a fantastic job of is being a resource to students and others who are interested in getting some of these options on their menus. And we have a whole team of people standing by who would love to work with any of your listeners who are struggling or who would like to work with their corporate cafeteria, their kids' cafeteria, or with their employer on getting more such options. So feel free to email us at meatlessmonday@humanesociety.org, and we will send you a toolkit and put you in touch with the person who represents your region.
That's so great. Okay. That I really hope that people will do this. And thank you so much
for that information and for all the information you've shared with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
That was Kristie Middleton and Ken Botts. And now let's get right into some news, shall we?
Lots of big stories in the news this week. Our first article is from The Guardian, and it's entitled, U.S. Adopts Near Total Ban on Commercial Ivory Trade. And there have been attempts in the past in the U.S. to reduce the sale of ivory. The ivory could be bought or sold only if it was imported before the animal was listed as endangered or if the elephant died of natural causes. But all of these just created a lot of potential for loopholes and a lot of motivation for poaching and for murder. And in fact, this number is going to freak you out. It freaks me out. Every single day, an estimated 96 African elephants are killed for ivory. It's just unbelievable. And the United States is the second biggest consumer, right after China. And so these new rules, they were put in place by the Obama administration, not as a result of legislation. Only antique items more than 100 years old, such as figurines or chess pieces, or objects containing relatively small amounts of ivory, such as pianos and other musical instruments, will be legal for sale. I would like to see it be a total ban. I really would. But hopefully these exceptions are a lot easier to enforce than the old exceptions, which were kind of impossible to enforce. And there are also ongoing talks with China in hopes that they will put in place regulations that will reduce the consumption there. And the reason for this is, unfortunately, not compassion for elephants, but that the traffic in ivory has risen to the level of a global security threat because there have been connections between ivory trafficking and extremist and terrorist groups such as the Lord's Army. And so the African ivory trade has been funding terrorism, and as a result, there has been intense interest, and as a result of that interest, there are finally these rules in place, which let's hope it puts at least a dent in the horrific murder of all of these elephants. Our second article this week, also very big news. This is from PETA's website. New law will spare many thousands of animals the agony of cruel chemical tests. This is a very big deal. This is a statute called the Frank R. Lautenberg Chemical Safety for the 21st Century Act. Frank Lautenberg, of course, being senator from New Jersey. And this is going to modernize chemical toxicity testing requirements. And this regards testing industrial chemicals, which is currently done on enormous numbers of animals. And really, there's additional reason for this legislation as well, rather than compassion, is that the science just is really surpassed the idea that these chemicals should be tested on animals. And even the current tests, they do these tests on animals, and even if the test substance harms animals, it can still be marketed. And even if it is shown to be safe in animals, there's no guarantee that it will be safe in humans. So the tests are just completely ridiculous, and they are going to be mandated to be replaced. And this new law will require that non-animal testing methods have to be developed, prioritized, and used before toxicity tests on animals are considered. And we're talking about tens of thousands of animals a year who will be spared, who won't be born into this horrible system. So that's really, really exciting news. And our final story from today is from A Humane Nation, which is Wayne Pacelli's blog. And this is about the huge undercover investigation that was conducted this week by HSUS, or that was revealed this week by HSUS. The name of this blog is Latest HSUS Undercover Investigation Reveals Painful Practices in the Egg Industry. And obviously, Rose is really incensed about this, as you can probably hear in the background. the reason, obviously, that this particular undercover investigation was conducted at this particular time and in the particular place where it was, which was Maine, was because of the pending ballot initiative in Massachusetts. And this factory farm that was investigated supplies eggs to a number of states, which include Massachusetts. And there are 4 million hens imprisoned at this horrific complex of warehouses where they are imprisoned. And it's owned by the infamous Jack DeCoster, who's been in the egg business in the United States. I think he's actually Dutch. And he has actually been convicted of crimes related to the recall of 500 million eggs recalled due to salmonella at operations in Iowa and Ohio, causing a huge public health crisis. And this video is hoping, clearly, to reach the people of Massachusetts and let them understand where their eggs are coming from and why that should be stopped and why the provisions that should be put into place that are encompassed in the ballot initiative, which include more space for laying hens and require that all eggs purchased in Massachusetts, all eggs for sale there, not just the eggs produced there, would comply with the strictures of the ballot initiative. And among the horrors that we see in the video here, really, just, if you think there has been any improvement in the egg industry, disabuse yourself of that thought, because it's as bad, if not worse, than ever. And there are just rotting carcasses in these battery cages where the hens are crammed in so closely they can't possibly spread their wings, and these rotting carcasses are in a condition that it's surmised that they must have been there for months. Hens that are trapped by their necks, wings, feet in rusty wire cages. Hens with horrible injuries or defects, like with bloody prolapses, facial abnormalities. The HSUS investigator was told by his supervisor not to do anything for these horrifically wounded and deformed hens, and he was quoted as saying, "As long as it's standing up and laying eggs, that's all that matters." Just God, don't you just hate these people? I just loathe humans, except for you guys. And as I said, if you think there's been any change in the egg industry because there have been so many agreements to move towards cage-free, well, it ain't happened yet. And let's hope that we see some improvement in the future, and hope that we see the end of the egg industry not too far in the future. But in the meantime, 9 out of 10 egg-laying chickens in the United States are still locked inside battery cages. So there has been no improvement yet in the egg industry, and it's a nightmare out there. And that's it for this week's news.
Well, this was the 335th episode of Our Hen House, and we are so grateful to you for joining us. As always, you could check us out over at ourhenhouse.org. You could learn more about my book, Always Too Much and Never Enough, at jasminesinger.com. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/ourhenhouse, and Instagram at Our Hen House. Same with Twitter at Our Hen House. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us at info@ourhenhouse.org. And if you have any questions that you'd like us to maybe answer on the air, you could drop us a line there as well. Don't forget to leave us a friendly review if you can. That is always so helpful. And word of mouth is as well. So we are so grateful to you for joining us, and we will talk to you next week. My name is Jasmine Singer, and I hope you have a really fantastic one.